Jonathan is checking out his hair. 'Cause he's so vain. He probably thinks this video's about him.
My girlfriend says she doesn't have any. She's the only girl she knows whose man has more hair products than she does.
Well, hey everybody, it's the Mad Cat, if you didn't know. And this is my friend Andrew doing another episode of Parlor Parley. And just like last time, the whole idea of the name is not currently true because we're obviously not in my parlor. We're in a production studio where Jonathan works. And he was kind enough to let me come in and start monkeying around with a bunch of things. And we were going to be streaming through the GoPro and, you know, using all kinds of fancy microphones and everything. But I don't have a video capture device, which is apparently 100% absolutely necessary if you're going to run the GoPro through OBS. So close, but not quite. But that's okay. We are just going to do it using my trusty Samsung Note 5, like we've been doing. And next month we'll try again. And I may come back to the studio with an audio capture device, or not an audio capture device, a video capture device.
Okay.
I really should have lowered this so that I can actually see you, because
Talking to the back of your laptop.
hello. But yes, and also we're not currently enjoying fermented plant water, which is again supposed to be like one of the tenets of the Parlor Parley, is that I have an artist to interview, or an appreciator of the arts, or patron of the arts, or someone who's all of the above, and we enjoy some fermented plant water together. But today is just water. I'm real quick just going to open up my YouTube studio so that I can keep track of comments if anybody is able to join in. And if you are not able to join in and you are enjoying this later, thanks for watching it later. So, Jonathan, to get us started, and as I stall for some time to pull up my YouTube creator studio, what is it that you do? So listen, talk to the camera.
Oh,
And speak from the diaphragm.
I'm a producer and director for a small.
You can speak up a little bit.
I'm a producer and director for an independent film production company called the Independent Gorilla.
Okay.
And so I make movies, commercials, music videos, whatever the project is.
And what role or multiple roles are you taking on with that? Are you directing? Are you behind the camera? Are you doing editing? Are you strong-arming people into making sure that they read the damn call sheets and are there on time?
Yes.
In theater, we call that a stage manager. I don't know exactly what they would call it.
Producer.
Producer? Okay.
AD. In it's AD.
Okay. All right. So where are you originally from? Did you ever learn that dreams don't come true? And tell us a favorite childhood memory.
Oh God. I was born in Omaha, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to California, Southern California at a young age. Spent most of my formidable youth there, and then moved back to the Midwest because it was more. It has more of a family, more relaxed. Well, I wouldn't say relaxed, but it has more of a community type atmosphere here.
Okay. I would agree with that.
And what were the other questions were?
Did you ever learn that dreams don't come true?
No, I've never learned that dreams don't come true.
Good, because that question is obviously a trick question, but I still ask it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pursuing my dreams now. It's something that I've wanted to do since I was a kid. I had to stop midway in life because I had a child. Well, I didn't have a child. My wife at the time had a child when I was 21, and so I had to go into the workforce and provide for the family. And until they grew up, I was just a computer programmer for about 2 decades. And then once they were old enough to be out on their own, and they were no longer needed to collect child support out of my paycheck, I decided to end the career as a computer programmer and pursue the career path as a filmmaker.
Very good. Han, I did just text you in the bio, but thanks for jumping in. I know you're let's see, 5 hours ahead. So I guess it's not too late for you. I'm actually streaming at a time where you can join. I have some people in Europe, so
Cool.
I try to find a happy medium for times where I'm getting everything going that can work for more people.
Well, I would say even if you're broadcasting it to at 5 o'clock in the evening here,
Yeah.
You guys need to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning so you can see what's going on.
Well, poor Han has stayed up a number of times, and they're like, I'm only popping in for just a minute, but then it's like an hour, 2 hours later. All right, now I really need to go to bed. Yes, you do. Go sleep.
You are the man, Han.
So did we have a favorite childhood memory?
Favorite childhood memory. My childhood was full of good memories.
That's really nice.
A favorite one. I think one of the most memorable ones was when I was a kid and I was out in California and I got to sit on the MGM lion's back. So I actually sat on a live lion. So that was,
wow.
Yeah, that stuck in my head for a long time.
Oh, it's sticking in my head too.
Yeah, and then I would have to say I was a boxer for many years. I'd gotten a couple trophies. Those were pretty cool. I used to be a skateboarder, and I've got these skateboarding. I mean, there's a lot of cool, but well, wait a minute. I'd have to say the best memory that I have, one that always sticks. It comes from the heart is my dad and I took his motorcycle out to a big lake and we just hung out and tanned all day.
Okay.
And it was a good memory to just hang out with my dad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of the reason that I ask this question of people is because, like, I don't think I had a terrible childhood or anything, but when I look back, I can't really think of anything. Like, I have to really sit and think, like, to think of a quote good or a great childhood, or no, a favorite childhood memory, because I see that question as like a writing prompt or like an interview question all the time. And I'm like, I don't really know that I have a favorite childhood memory, and maybe that's because like my childhood wasn't that bad or anything. It was pretty even keel. So I mean, I have a few like traumatic childhood memories.
Yeah, we all have those. Definitely.
And the only reason I would call them traumatic is because I can recall them like in very great detail, and I've had a few people, like, after I've relayed those memories, I've had people tell me, wow, that really stuck with you, and they're like kind of taken aback by how much detail I have specifically about that bad memory. I was like, I guess maybe it was a little traumatic because I remember it like crystal clear.
Well, they say that your first memory is a traumatic memory because it sparks it. What do you know what age your first memory of
actually
hanging out is?
It's totally the opposite for me. My first memory that I can recall is actually one of like awe, like in kind of a childhood wonderment kind of way.
Candy, right?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was born in 29 Palms, California. It's out in the Mojave Desert. And it was because it's a military base. My father was in the Marine Corps. And because it was so hot during the day, we would never go on walks or anything. And also because I'm pretty sure my mom was in the ER working as an ER nurse for, different shifts and things. So they would take me out at night to go on walks, and I would be in a stroller. And my first memory that I can recall that, like, with some confidence, and I don't feel like it's just, like, it's a memory because people have told it to me so many times over the year. Or over the years, rather, multiple, plural, because I've been alive for many. But yeah, my first memory that I can distinctly think of that wasn't relayed to me through other people was being in the stroller, being out at night for a walk, and looking up and seeing what was either a full moon or something very close to a full moon. And there wasn't much more than that. I mean, it was, a pretty clear, cloudless night out in the desert.
Nice.
And I don't really remember sounds or smells or anything, but I do remember
The moon, huh?
I remember the moon.
That's cool.
Yeah, and if you don't if you're I don't know if you're into horoscopes at all. I think they're fun. I'm if you don't account for, I can't remember what the word is, but there's something about like the rotation of the Earth shifts slightly every few years, and so like what your classic horoscope type isn't your true horoscope type because the position of the stars changes a little bit. I can't remember the exact theory behind that, but if you don't account for that, I want to say that I'm not an Aries. What's the windy one?
The windy one?
The one that's associated with wind. I think it's right before Cancer. It doesn't matter. In any case, classic, total tangent. Hashtag story octopus. Beep beep. I'm a Cancer, so I'm a total moon child, and I've always been obsessed with the moon. And like, no matter where I'm at in my life or what's going on, I can always walk outside and just be like, "Oh my God, you guys, look at the moon!" And everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." I'm like, "No, but look at it. It doesn't matter what what time of year it is, or like." If it's the harvesty orange moon or if it's just a little sliver of a moon. I just love the moon.
Very cool.
Precession of the Earth. Thank you, Han. That's what it's called. If you don't account for precession of the Earth, then I'm a Cancer. If you do account for it, I don't remember what it is that I am, but it's something that's not Cancer. This isn't a question that I had to write down, but do you know what's your sign, baby?
Virgo.
You're a Virgo?
Yeah.
Okay. I can see that.
According to my basic knowledge of.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted? I would call this arts related, but if you think of it more as like communication, then feel free to say that. But like the work that you do with production, and or the arts, when did you know that you wanted it to be a major part of your life?
I think I've always known that I wanted, and somehow I wanted to be in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
I was probably one of those kids that sat in front of the TV too much when I was little, and my thing was commercials. And I remember Mom, she tells everybody this story, but I had learned that there was an aftershave commercial. I can't remember what the aftershave was, but I had heard my grandfather, who was a World War II veteran, curse, and he dropped the F-bomb. And I was little. I was probably, I think she said I was 4, and so I dropped the F-bomb too. Well, my grandfather, being the hard guy he was, kind of gave me a little smack on the mouth.
But you said
the
it.
Cheek. And the first thing I said was, "Thanks, I needed that," which was what they said in the aftershave commercial. So, but
Because of this motion you do with the aftershave.
Exactly. Well, no, the commercial actually said, "Thanks, I needed that," and so I repeated that. "Thanks, I needed that."
That's funny.
But I've always liked. I have a vivid imagination. If somebody describes something to me, I can see it plain as day what's happening.
Very visual.
Yes, which can be a good thing and it can be a bad thing, because if you got a buddy who's describing something that happens, you're like, "Oh, way too much information for me, man. Just dial back a little bit." But I've always had a vivid imagination, and I was kind of shy when I was younger, but I've always been into like movies and television and stuff like that, and always was fascinated on how they, how they made the movies and television shows and stuff like that. And when I got older, I think I was in high school. Well, before, in junior high school through maybe, I think, my senior year in high school, I was too cool for the arts.
Too cool?
Oh, yeah. I thought I was. I was a fool. I wasn't cool.
More like the entertainment side.
If you've ever seen The Breakfast Club, Bender's character,
okay,
that was me.
All right.
Flannels, boots, jeans, hated everything in the world. Some people called me a Hessian in those days, and that was because we smoked weed out of the school and everything. but I didn't get into the arts.
Young degenerates.
Yes, young degenerate. A lot of people in the art industry are, I guess you could say, we're kind of degenerates, but we're more open to experiences and stuff. So
Yeah. Well, and I think part of the reason that people in the arts are more open to different experiences is because I don't know. I think it can be kind of both. If you already have the sort of mindset that's pretty open and pretty inquisitive
yes,
and exploratory and experimental, if you're a trier, because you or what I always call it an experientialist, and that is actually kind of based on a really nerdy D&D thing. There is like this sect of people who follow. I want to say
that's a good word for it. Sect.
Yeah, I want to say it's the Lady of Pain, is who they follow, and a lot of people like join up with this group because they want to try all the weird sex stuff. But then others are like true experientialists. They're like, no, if a certain kind of pain is something that I can experience, it's something to experience. And I've always kind of been that way, like, and I have like a weird pain threshold, so I'm very bad whenever I'm injured, like going to the doctor, like, well, what would you say your pain is on a scale of 1 to 10? And I'm like, I don't know. It sucks, but like, I also don't think of it as something that's necessarily like ruining my life, except for my lipedema. That was ruining my life. But that was the first time that I'd ever had anything like seriously pain-wise that was ruining me on an everyday basis kind of thing. But other than that, and I was also, the weirdo kid. I never smoked pot in high school or did any kind of any kind of substances, anything, not even alcohol. I just didn't roll with anyone who did, and it seemed like a lot of work to like seek it out, so I just never did.
Well, that's why
but
that was the reason you hung out with people that did, because then it wasn't such a task to seek it out.
Maybe.
Because you had a collection of people that would seek it out and let you know where you could get it.
But I was a kid who would give myself salt burns. Like
what?
So I worked at a movie theater. Do you remember Cinema Center at all?
I do.
That was my first job, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And I was behind concessions quite often. And when there was absolutely nothing to do, had refilled everything, already past the point of if you have time to lean, you have time to clean. There is only so much work that you can do before there's nothing to do. Things can only be so clean. Employers, please learn this in retail, in service industries, in everything. Like, there are moments when you just can sit. It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
But I would, like, take salt from, because we put it on the popcorn, and I would put it I usually would do, like, my hands and my arms, and then I would, like, take pieces of ice out of the ice machine and kind of, like, melt them down against the counter to get them into certain shapes or angles, so that I could press it against the salt on my skin. And basically what it essentially is like a chemical burn. And it didn't,
what?
I know, it sounds like a really weird thing. And it wasn't like,
hell no.
Yes, the pain makes me feel alive. It wasn't anything like that. It was just
straight
like
out of Fight Club.
it was just a thing I did.
Yeah.
And for the longest while I had like, it wasn't exactly what's the Egyptian eye called? Is it Roth?
Ra.
Yeah.
The eye Ra.
Yeah, the eye Ra. I kind of had one of those over on on one of my hands, and I had, I want to say, like a triangle on my other hand.
So you liked wounds that were shaped like shit.
Maybe? I don't know.
That's basically essentially what it is, right?
I mean, I guess. I would also, I don't do it as much anymore. But I used to draw on myself all the time. Like, that's another reason that I hate, like, regular pens that aren't, like, gel ink, was because the regular, just, like, especially erasable pens. We were supposed to use erasable pens at my school. I, like, flat out refused to do that, and I would use ink pens, and I had, like, whiteout tape that I would use. I got in trouble for it constantly.
Yeah, see, you're younger than me. We didn't even have, when I was in school and like, you're talking grage school, right?
Yeah,
With the
yeah.
erasable. Yeah, we didn't have erasable pens in grade
They're
school.
awful, and they don't erase well. They don't look good. They get all smudgy and meh.
Yeah, we didn't have none of your newfangled erasable pens.
Han's asking, you got free snacks though. You mean when I worked at the movie theater? I think we could have free popcorn and we could have free soda, but I have never been much of a soda drinker, so that didn't really appeal to me. Did occasionally sneak nacho cheese onto my free popcorn. That was probably not allowed. Yet another example of what a degenerate I was.
Mhm.
Slash am.
Don't feel bad. I did the same thing. One of my first jobs was at a Hardee's. And I was flipping burgers in the back, and we threw away food all the time.
Yeah.
Like if somebody didn't, order, or they changed their mind, or they
Or they said, this is wrong.
changed their mind on the drive-through or something.
Yeah.
But they would not let us have it. We got a discount on the food.
Yeah.
So since I was working in back,
Yeah.
I would specifically make my sandwich
Mm-hmm.
and slide it in the slot and say I wanted that one. So, for a 40% discount, and which I probably should have done, as you could tell, with my beautiful physique now. But I throw a piece of chicken on there, a quarter pounder on there, some roast beef, whatever. But the sandwich was like
I was
this
like, that's
big,
that's a hella sandwich.
yeah, and I'd take some home, so I could have it later. But I figure if the man's gonna screw me, I'm gonna screw the man right back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never understood people in the restaurant industry who are like, if this order comes back,
Mhm.
like nobody can have it.
Yeah.
I understand, like, you don't want people abusing the system, but like, there are very few people who are gonna like take the elaborate amount of, or take the time to create this elaborate plot. All right,
Yeah.
here's what you're gonna do, man. You're gonna come in, you're gonna order the surf and turf, but then you're gonna get up at the last minute when they bring it to you and say, I'm leaving this establishment forever.
Me and my buddies did
So that they'll bring it back and I can
Yeah.
eat it. Thanks.
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna do that.
I won't say who this was, but a friend of ours worked at Pizza Hut, and so towards the end of the night, we'd call in like an order for like 4 or 5 pizzas, and of course the person never came and picked it up. So our friend who was a manager there would bring the pizzas back to us, and so we got free pizza that way. But my first job when I was 15 years old, I was a dishwasher at a restaurant, a high-end restaurant. And the reason I got that job was because the master chef, was my aunt's friend.
Okay.
And so, but she was different about stuff like that. She would actually, she knew that we worked hard, we busted our butts, and so she would actually prepare us fancy, nice meals. I remember sitting in the cooler one day, me and 3 other guys, servers, were eating T-bone steaks and fresh baked potatoes. And I mean, we had these awesome meals, but I think that's probably because it was her, her primary thing. And since it was more of it wasn't a fast food thing where the dollars counted. The dollars coming in all the time. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a thought and then it just went, and it's floating around the room and it might come back to me. What's something that you're working on right now that you would like to tell us about? I know you had one thing that you mentioned to me. I don't know if that's the thing you want to mention. You're allowed to mention multiple things.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I have several projects that are in various stages of development. I have a travel show that was designed for people, the cannabis culture, people who smoke it, eat it, whatever it is, and it's called Travel Buds. And
I really love that name.
www.travelbuds.tv.
I'll put a link in the description below after we're done.
Sweet, thank you. But
Gotta plug that stuff, man.
Gotta get it out there. Gotta sell it. That's my whole industry, is that I have to appeal to the public in media and whatever it is. So that's kind of why I'm in front of the camera now, which isn't a usual thing.
But you're working on it.
Yes,
I'm so proud of you.
I'm working on it. I think you're the first person. So
that
Yes.
has been able to get you on camera.
yes, that is. Yep.
Score one for the Mad Hat.
I mean, I've done on-camera work as an actor
Uh-huh.
a few different times. I'll come back to this. Remind me to come back and tell you about a couple experiences acting.
I will. I'm gonna put a note for myself.
Note to self. But Travel Buds is it's a travel and tourism show for the cannabis culture, or cannabis culture, and we go to different 420 friendly locations where you can either smoke at the location or event or whatever it is, or you could come in high or whatever it is, or vape or whatever. And it's not a comedy type thing. I mean, it's not like a Cheech and Chong or a half baked type show. It's more of a, I would say maybe parts unknown meets Globe Trekkers or Booze Cruise or
Okay.
something like that. So it's a mixture of. I mean, we went on, and you could see this on the site. I did a supercut for a festival in Colorado.
Real quick, remind me again what a supercut is. I'm familiar with the term, but I don't remember what it is.
It's just like I took a full episode and I cut it down to a 15-minute
Got it.
supercut.
Okay.
And so it's got a lot of the highlights in it. And so I took that out to Colorado to the Colorado International Cannabis and Hemp Film Festival. And I wanted to let the culture, the people who go who are interested in these types of programs,
Mm-hmm.
get an idea what they thought of the show. And the main feedback, the feedback that I really appreciated was they said that I did it right. That some of the documentaries that they saw were like, they felt a little overly serious because they were talking, and which is very important because cannabis helps with PTSD, seizures, all kinds of stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where those documentaries focused. Or it wasn't like a bunch of guys sitting around getting stoned, acting foolish on a couch or something like that.
That's like not the only thing that it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's high functioning smokers out there that a friend of mine was a CTO, a chief technology officer for a large telemarketing firm, and at lunch he could go out and he take a few hits and he'd come back in and map the schematics for the network with no problem at all. So
Right.
it's not like the stereotypical stoner,
Yeah.
which you see, and these are people that are stoned. I can understand that.
Yeah.
And they're sitting around or they're acting foolish or something like that, or they're squinty or red-eyed or whatever it is. That's
Well, and also, I mean, cannabis affects everybody differently.
well, and there's levels. I
Yeah.
mean, there's okay. So if you drink after work, you come home, maybe you have a beer
Yeah.
or a scotch, okay, or you come home and you drink a 12-pack. There's a huge difference. Now,
There
for
is a
me,
huge difference.
if I get up in the morning, I do the term for it is wake and bake. But what I do is I have my coffee. I might have a bowl of sativa, which is a more uplifting and a head high,
Mm-hmm.
and so then I can function. But I won't, I'll take one hit or maybe two.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't sit there and smoke a whole bowl or do a bunch of bong hits or something like that.
Right.
My intent's not to get stoned. You know what I mean?
Seeing the giant glass bongs and just seeing people like rip giant hits off of them. I'm just,
Yeah, and I don't have the lungs for that type of stuff myself.
oh my god.
But at night, because I have diabetes type 2, and I've had it for quite a few years, and so I'm starting to get a little nerve pain in my legs.
Mm-hmm.
And so at night, I have a choice. I mean, I can have a choice of either to take medication, opioids, to quell the pain, or I can take a couple hits of indica, and it relieves the nerve pain.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do? Am I going to take something that's going to constantly destroy my liver, or make me I
Right.
become addicted to the thing, or something like that?
Yeah.
Or a natural herb. So
Well, and anything can become addictive depending on your mental state of why you're taking it, and like if you start imbibing it or eating it. I'm not sure what because imbibing is more like for liquid things. I'm not sure what the masticating, eating,
consuming.
consuming. There we go. Imbibing or consuming.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what was my point? I swear I'm not high. Not today, anyway. The event that leads you to do that. If you're doing it as a reaction to something bad happening to you, and then you start getting in the habit of turning to this thing whenever you're feeling bad, I mean, that can happen with anything.
It can.
But
and
I would definitely, I definitely agree that cannabis is, and the general culture behind it
Mhm.
is focused a lot more on using it in a way that is healthful, rather than as a way to like forget your life.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
there's, I mean, you know,
and it's becoming more, that side of cannabis culture, I think, is becoming more prominent, whereas
it's not becoming more
alcohol
prominent.
is
It's always been
always,
there.
yeah. Well, I think when I say more prominent, I mean within like the mainstream, because a lot of people, I think, have the impression that, well, and especially when your exposure to it in movies and television
Starts out with
is,
Reefer Madness, and yeah,
oh my god.
yeah.
Okay,
And those people
anybody
look like they
should
were
be
on
able
crack,
to see
not
Reefer Madness, either the musical or the ridiculous propaganda film, which is also a really fun watch.
Mhm.
Anyone should be able to see that.
Yeah, I've gotten high and watched Reefer
as
Madness before.
I just see it as it's exactly what it is. It's so very obvious that it's over the top propaganda.
It is. It's over the top.
And not to mention all the fucking racist overtones. Don't even get me started. Which
Mhm.
is why I know that marijuana is like a a word for it that I suppose could be referring to the plant. I don't, but it's based pretty heavily on anti Central America
Mhm.
sentiment, which, I mean, marijuana.
Marijuana.
Yeah.
Well, it was
So
hemp
when
up until they did that.
I was gonna say it was just hemp up until then, and I
Yeah.
know people always use this as an example, but George Washington grew hemp. Yeah, because it's a plant that
Yeah.
has multiple uses. It's not just being used for recreational purposes. It can be used to create textile products and a number of other
Textile,
things.
fabric,
Mhm.
paper.
Yeah.
It's better on the environment. Hemp can be grown. Hemp is a better crop in the Midwest than corn. It lasts longer throughout the seasons. Like we only have 4 or 5 months of seasons that we can grow stuff here in the Midwest, whereas hemp you can grow year round.
Yes, that is another thing.
It
Be
does
to be
not
looking
consume
at
as
it.
much water from
It's
the
more
environment.
sustainable.
Yes, yes,
Very
and
important things.
and the thing is that there's a difference between hemp and psychotropic THC.
Yeah.
And
There are different compounds within the
there are
same
hemp
plant.
plants that don't really have. I mean, the only thing you're going to get from smoking like a hemp plant that's being used to for manufacturing textiles or anything like that is a headache.
Yeah.
So there are types of weed, and I think that covers everything that have that higher THC levels in it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but back to the show, it's just a simple thing, and then and if we want to continue more on the THC thing, maybe we'll save that one for another one.
Yeah, no,
We'll do
I'd be happy to have you back, and
we'll see after the interview. And you're like, I don't want to talk to that asshole ever again.
I don't think that's true. By the way, Xerxes is in the room. Hey, Xerxes, thanks for joining us. Just to reintroduce anyone who has just joined, this is my friend Jonathan Lanz, mutual friend through our first interviewee from the first episode of Parlour Parley, Dave Nesbitt.
David.
And I do want to get back to your experiences in acting, but since we are still on the subject of projects that you're currently working on, one of those projects is the project that I'm working on for Dave. My capacity in it is as an actor, and what would you say? Originally, you were going to be directing, right?
Originally, I was going to direct. Dave Dave came to me with the idea a couple years back when I've been volunteering for the Omaha Film Festival for about 12 years. And Dave and I became friends a few years back, and I knew he was a reliable guy, and he's a smart guy, technically. And so I asked him if he could help out and volunteer one time. And so he's been volunteering with the Omaha Film Festival for the past years. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure I've announced this to everybody, and maybe the director is in denial of the director of the Omaha Film Festival, but I am retiring from the film festival, and Dave is going to be taking over, and I trust him wholly for that. But he was telling me about an idea he had for a show, and we started talking, and I really dug the concept for it, and I said, well, let's work on this and let's develop it.
Mm-hmm.
So for the past couple of years, Dave's been working on the screenplay, and I've been working on other projects and trying to find means to be able to afford to produce this show without going to outside sources, which is part of what my Travel Buds show is. So Dave's been primarily writing.
The Travel Bud show, you would say, is an outside source.
Travel Buds, I would say, once I get the show sold,
Mm-hmm.
then what I would do is as a company, as a production company, I would take my profits from that particular show and reinvest it back into other projects so I can have multiple projects going on all the time.
This is a great behind the scenes look at how things like this are
It's a
actually
job,
made.
man.
It
It's
is a job.
It's a job. There's a lot of people that come into this industry and they think, oh, I'm going to be discovered, or oh, it's all fantasy and everything. But when you watch a film, if you watch some of these bigger productions, you
Mhm.
see this extremely long list of people that are in the credits.
Yeah.
Well, it takes a lot of people
It
to pull
really
these things
does,
together,
which is part of the reason
and it's
that
work.
no matter what film I'm seeing, I always stay till the end of the credits.
Oh, that's
And I know
nice.
that I'm not gonna know everybody
Yeah.
in there, third grip or whatever. I have no idea who these people are, but they helped make the movie,
Mhm.
and
By the way, a
and
third
I
grip is
wanna.
just called a grip. It might be third AC.
This is why I'm not on the production side,
Yes.
or at least it's not my forte. Like obviously sometimes I have to be, just
Or you're more of a
out of
performer,
necessity.
correct?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Like clearly I am sort of producing
You are.
my stuff. I mean I am.
Yes.
As far as my live productions go, I've also been a producer in that sense because I'm writing, I'm working with venues, I am doing the adverts and stuff.
Mhm.
Sometimes pulling together music, and when you don't have money, you got to do everything yourself.
Independence, yes. Indie film.
Woo! Or indie
art.
indie vaudeville.
Indie art.
But yeah, well, and to be fair, I sit through so that I can throw a little love out into the universe for all the people that made the thing happen, because a lot of people are involved and they very rarely get any credit for it.
Mhm.
I also like to foster a good relationship, live production wise, between actors and techs. I feel like it's gotten better in recent years, and maybe it's just because I've worked with a wider variety of troupes and venues and theaters, etc. But I feel like it's a little less. Oh my God, actors! They think everything's about them. I said not to sit on the couch. It's a prop on stage. You don't get to sit on it backstage. God damn it! And actors aren't like, oh my God, the techs are so mean to us.
Oh, but here's the thing.
But I get it, because the actors are the ones who go out on stage. But there's a reason that after we take our bows, we point up to the booth, we point into the wings, we point down below in the orchestra pit, because it's a collaborative art. It's a collaborative process, and it's not just the people who are front and center who are doing a lot of work. Now, conversely, I also get pissed that the people in the booth and the people in the orchestra and the people in the wings are getting paid while the people on stage are not.
Yeah.
That bothers me.
You got to get a better union.
A union that allows you to do work outside the union if you don't live in a major city, that'd be great. Like, can
it does.
can
There are
we
levels.
add?
There are levels.
Yeah, I know.
There are
I'm
levels.
just.
I've gotten union SAG-AFTRA actors that on different scales. We have indie scales. We have tiers for pay scales. And if you have a project that's a passion project, the actor is interested in doing, then they can tell the union, hey, I want to do this project. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a union gig. So it's not like
Well,
they're
that's
forced
good.
to.
That's good to know,
The main
because
protection-
it has never been presented to me that
Yeah.
way.
No, it is. And I mean, see, there's levels of, and that's the thing about the unions. I love unions, even though sometimes they can be difficult to work with. There's IATSE, which is the International Stage and Theatrical Actors, something like that. There's
Yeah.
the Directors Guild, which is something I'm aiming to try to get to be part of.
Yeah.
Actors. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different unions, but the unions are set up for protections. Because what was it? A couple years ago,
Oh yeah, no.
there was that film that they were trying to do about Greg Allman, And there was a girl who they were shooting on a bridge, and it was an independent film, but the directors and the producers didn't take precautions. Now, I'm just a small time indie producer, and I always make sure that everything's covered when it comes to protecting property or people.
Yeah.
Everything is safe.
Yes. And I appreciate you for that.
Well, I mean, you can do crazy looking stuff safely. I mean, there's ways to do it, and,
Yes.
and that's where experience comes in. If you know how to do it, if you don't know how to do it, don't try to do it. Like, don't just go shoot in some abandoned warehouse somewhere without knowing that the damn thing could fall, or your actors can break a leg or get hurt, or lead poisoning or something like that. Do your due diligence and make sure that everything's going to be safe. Well, the unions do that. They make sure that actors get what they're supposed to be paid. They make sure that they get insurance, that stuff. I mean, there's now, because of a producer and director on that Greg Allman film, Sarah, God, I feel bad because I can't remember her last name now, but they were shooting on a train track on a bridge, and even the smallest thing they could have done was sent two people with walkie-talkies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if as far as they could go and still be in range,
Yeah.
and one the other way, and notify somebody, hey, a train's coming, but nobody was out there protecting them.
Oh my God.
And a train came, and everybody got offset now because sometimes producers can be they're more mindset on the business side of stuff.
Yeah.
They want you to make sure that the equipment's not going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
Well, everybody does. But Sarah should have, instead of dropping the camera, went back to get the camera,
No.
and she was hit by the train.
No.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, and that's not the first time it's happened. There have been actors that have worked.
Any kind of permit? Because I know I have a
No, they
few
did
friends
not have a permit to shoot on that track,
who work for
and that's why they went to jail.
Union Pacific,
Yeah.
and they are really super
Yes.
strict. Like
Oh, yeah.
and I'm guilty of this too. There is a photo of me down by the train tracks, over on whatever it is, 10th Street. I'm away from the tracks, but I'm still probably, and it's a shame because I really like that photo too.
Well, you know what? See, okay,
So, warning: please don't shoot or film anything near train tracks without contacting whoever is in charge of that railroad, because it's probably illegal. It's almost 100% sure illegal if you don't have some kind of communication.
And that's
with
kind
them.
of an oxymoron for my company, because
Yeah.
My company's called the Independent Gorilla,
Yeah.
which is a play on two different words: guerrilla filmmaking, and because
And then-
we're the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Yep.
But it's not the oxymoron, well, the contradiction between my company and what I do is that anytime I shoot on anything, I always get permits for everything, and insurance, and everything is covered. Because God forbid somebody gets hurt on set and I get sued for all my equipment that I've accumulated over years or something like that. But even if you're going to do something that's guerrilla filmmaking, be smart about it. Be
Please.
smart. You know, think ahead of time.
People are always
What's
worth
the
more
worst
than
case
equipment.
scenario that can happen?
People are
Yes.
always worth more than equipment.
Yeah.
It may suck to lose a very expensive camera or a piece of lighting.
Well, that's why you have insurance.
That's why you have insurance,
That's why you
please.
have insurance.
But even if you don't, losing that camera is always going to be better than losing a person.
For sure.
It always
For sure.
always is.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen the documentary about the group of guys who made like a shot for shot remake of Indiana Jones. I think it was the first one.
Was that a YouTube?
No, these guys did it like back in the 80s.
I
Like
think
they
I've
were
seen
they were
something
doing
about
it. They showed like the full completed thing when at Alamo. And that was really neat.
Mhm.
And it was a shot for shot remake of Indiana Jones done by these kids, and because they were doing it over the course of years, and some of the scenes, are kind of like they shot different scenes at different ages. It is just this weird kind of catalog of how they grew up, and they like were really dedicated to finishing it.
Mhm.
And when there was one scene that they never got to do, and that's the scene with the plane that explodes, and the big beefy guy is wrestling with Indy,
Yeah.
and I can't remember whose head gets lopped off from the plane's propeller, but somebody's does.
Yeah.
And they were never able to do that because it was just like too big a scale. So when they were
Yeah.
adults, they kind of got it into their head like, well, maybe we could do this now. Because I think one of them
But
was
on
actually
that,
working
if you
in
remember-
the industry.
if you remember,
Hmm.
they didn't show the guy get chopped up by the propeller.
They did not know.
No, they cut away. They showed it coming,
Yep.
and the next thing you see is Indy looking
Is a
at it
splat.
and the splat.
Yep.
Well, that's the same thing with Reservoir Dogs
Hmm.
when the cop gets his ear sliced off.
Yeah.
I mean, he goes in and then they pan away.
Yeah.
And then
I'm fine with that.
and then everybody and people talk about how brutal that scene was.
Mm.
It's not the scene
It's
that was
not
brutal. It's the imagination of the
which
viewer.
is why I'm a big fan of cutaways.
Yeah, and you don't have to. And that's I mean that's Alfred Hitchcock was famous for saying it's the anticipation or it's the imagination of the audience which can be more brutal than the actual scene that's going on. But he would talk about having a bomb under the table, and instead of showing the explosion, it was the anticipation of what's going on. You know, the bomb is under there. They've got 30 seconds till it goes off. You're
Mhm.
seeing the clock. You're seeing
Yep,
all this other
yep.
stuff. The tension is from what's going to happen. Well, he didn't show it blow people up. He might have shown the outside or something else blowing up like that, but it's not the
Very
necessary of
sneaky.
seeing. But like a lot of horror movies, will go into very graphic and very brutal
Yeah.
scenes. Sometimes I can see where it's warranted, and
Yeah.
it might work to push the story forward. But if it's just something that's thrown in, like gratuitous violence or sex or something like that,
Yeah.
just for the off factor, I
Mhm.
think that's kind of, to me, doing that is it's lazy. It's
Well-
lazy. I mean, if you can't build a world around this story that you're doing,
And this is what you're relying on. It kind of like the saying that swearing is the last refuge of stand-up comedy because you're swearing and it gets a laugh because it's
It's
crude
easy.
language.
yeah, it's lazy. and it's
easy.
Yep.
Now it's funny that you talk about the gratuitous violence in film because like out of that emerged like a whole genre that uses the gratuitous violence as kind of an ironic statement like no we don't need to show this but it's kind of an homage to all of those movies
Mhm.
that did have the gratuitous violence. I prefer horror movies that have more of a psychological aspect
Smart
to it.
horror.
Yeah, well, and not even necessarily smart horror. Like I don't even I want them to like keep a lot from me
Mhm.
because if they keep a lot from me, then I have to put everything together, and that's almost always more terrifying.
Well, and your imagination could be more twisted than the imagination of the person who's
But there
doing the
are
gag.
there are some exceptions. I can't recall the name of it off the top of my head. It came out a couple years ago, and it was about I want to say the guy like worked on Wall Street or something, and he goes to this spa essentially. I can't remember if it's in Germany or
Switzerland. I just watched
Switzerland, and
Yeah,
like all the
that.
little
A cure for wellness.
yes, a cure for wellness. I
Yeah,
fucking loved
That was
movie.
great.
The not any spoilers, but there's a mouth horror
Mhm.
scene in there, and that was really difficult for me to watch. But and I never realized like I would have so much of a problem with it, like
Mhm.
how truly disturbed that it would make me. And they could have panned away for that, but
Mhm.
they didn't. And
Which scene are you talking about?
with the teeth.
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Oh my god.
Yeah, and see, to me, that doesn't seem that brutal.
See,
But if
I
it's
saw, I'm like I
your
was I
imagination.
kept waiting for him to pan away, and they
Uh-huh.
never did. They stayed on it,
They
and
did stay on it.
and they stayed on it for longer than you could. It wasn't like a quick second,
Yeah.
which is another technique where you can like you build up all that adrenaline from having like a quick shot of it, but then
Mhm.
they'll take it away.
and see, and that
And have like a weird come down
yeah, and for
from
you
that
that
adrenaline
was
shot.
that was
but-
rough.
But yeah, that I didn't think was
Mhm.
gratuitous. I think
No.
that was well placed, and it absolutely fit the style of the film. I really love that movie. I should
Yeah,
watch
it's
it
a good
again. I haven't watched nearly enough scary movies this October, I've been trying to make up for it like over the last week.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last night we watched the Cloverfield Paradox.
Mm.
And I don't know if you've seen the original Cloverfield
Did.
or Cloverfield Lane with John Goodman, which they
And the Paradox.
and oh, so you did.
Yes, I did.
So do you know what was it?
I call it research. If my fiance
was-
calls up and says, "What are you doing?" Research, babe.
Watching movies.
I'm not laying around on the couch watching movies.
Was Cloverfield Paradox, was that originally made to be within that, made as a thematic sequel, or did they already kind of have it on hand and they're like, you know what, we can throw this in with the Cloverfield, not really, not series, not genre. Oh my God, words. How did they work?
The Cloverfield world.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Within the Cloverfield world.
Yeah, I think they did. I mean,
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of artistic right you can go if there's certain. I mean, if you check out like some of the Hellraiser movies, which the first one, I'm a huge fan of Clive Barker as an author.
Ghost Mustache Patrick Swayze introduced me to. I mean, I had seen like bits and pieces of Hellraiser. This is what happens when you grow up on cable TV and HBO. You never see an entire movie from start to finish, very often, and so there are tons of like, you know, so-called must-see movies that I've only seen in bits and pieces, and Hellraiser was one of them. He introduced that to me a number of years ago. Very disturbing. I'll still I'll watch the rest of them. I will, but I have to time it carefully.
The books I read the Hellbound Heart before Hellraiser came out, and it's I actually read his Books of Blood, and one of the stories that he wrote called Rawhead Rex was a really good story, and in my head it was fantastic. But whoever decided to make the movie, it was shit. It was shit. And if people always said if there was one specific movie that you'd like to remake, that would probably be Rawhead Rex.
Okay.
But I mean, then there's like the Hellraiser series. A lot of these stories, Clive Barker didn't write. There's Cabal and a few other ones that go into that world with the Cenobites and whatnot. But you can tell where the difference comes from what Clive Barker did in certain films to where other people are writing based on, and you can see it in the credits. It says based on the character Pinhead.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what they're doing in Cloverfield. Is they're basing it on the world of what happened with the alien that came to Earth.
I think it's kind of cool. The original Cloverfield, I was not
Paradox
a huge.
was good.
I was
think
not
it
a
was.
huge fan of the original, but that's just because shaky cam gives
camera
me a
movement?
headache.
Yeah.
Shaky cam gives me a headache. It
was
was
a
an
little nauseating.
interesting idea. That and I don't know, found footage movies
Blair Witch Project.
are.
That's one of the
I've
big
never
ones.
actually
That's
seen
one of
that.
the-
Someday I
that's-
will.
That's one of the ones that kicked it off was the found footage
Yeah,
stuff.
the found footage stuff is kind of hit and miss for me, or hit or miss. That's the phrase. Sorry, now I'm thinking. Ever since you said the word Cenobites, I'm thinking of the one with the chattery teeth, and that's the one that freaks me out the most.
Yeah.
I can't do the noise. Jeremy does it really well. Like it's really rapid, and of course he has that terrifying face that he makes.
Jeremy's got some big teeth.
He does.
Yes.
He does. You said that there was, I think there was maybe a third project you were going to mention. We talked about Travel Buds. We talked about the project we're working on with Dave.
We kind of went off on a different tangent there, didn't we?
Hey, I know I mentioned this earlier.
It's freeform, man. Freeform.
But hashtag Story Octopus. What I call the Story Octopus is because I am such a tangential conversationalist. But it always comes back. You might go down the tentacle of the story of octopus, but you can come right back up to the beak and get to the head of the story, where you're coming back to.
So there's Blood Roses that I'm working on with David right now, and actually I was starting out as the director, and then I started rewriting some scenes in there, and David didn't care for it too much. And so he decided that he wanted to keep it the way it was and felt that the best way to do that was he wanted to direct himself.
Yeah.
Well, I'm supportive.
Yeah.
And, I've been behind him on this thing the whole time. And so I'm like, absolutely. And, whatever you need from me to help do this, I'm there for you, man. So I did I was the cinematographer, or I operated the camera yesterday. And so, and we shot you, one of your scenes.
Yep.
And she did fantastic.
I hear the footage looks pretty good. I'm excited
really
to see it. There's
you
some
check it
very
out,
dramatic mood lighting going on there.
yeah, later today I'm gonna upload a couple screen grabs
Ooh,
from the shoot. I mean, there was some cell phone pictures that were put up there,
yeah,
but cell phone pictures don't do what we did justice.
yeah,
So I told
yeah. No,
David,
I can't wait to you guys are using a really nice camera, and I know that
that's my little Sony here.
that little guy right there.
Yeah. But yeah, so we did that yesterday, and that's a project that's ongoing, and so we're gonna try to push that further with maybe a network or something like that. But um, development of that particular project is pretty wide. I mean, we've got several seasons mapped out for it, and the pilot's been done. I started a project here at my office. It's called the Table Read, and that's for aspiring screenwriters and actors to practice their skill set. And so what it is a screenwriter will present one of their projects, whether they're just starting it or
Mhm.
whether they've finished. They'll bring it to the table read, and then we have actors that come who, they
I like
get
the table reads.
they those are pretty cool. I like them too. And I'll tell you why I started it after this. But so David started out writing Blood Roses, the pilot episode, and he brought it to the table read, and was able to have actors voice act the screenplay for him, which is beneficial to a screenwriter because if you're developing a story and the dialogue that you're writing sounds brilliant, you can imagine everything that's
Mhm.
going on in there, which could be this elaborate, fantastic world that you're creating. But once actors start to interpret it the way they're going to,
Yep.
it'll come out different. You can find out that they're stumbling on certain dialogue phrases, the rhythm
Mhm.
of something.
Well, and he, as far as I can tell, has more experience as a novelist.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, I would
Oh, he's done great.
I would love to attempt to do some kind of screenplay work.
Yeah.
But I am verbose as all get out, because when my prose writing style, I call it poetic prose because it's elaborate and very like wizard coming out of the woods oratory kind of sounding.
Well, you're the lead in the pilot, so you've read the screenplay. So you
Yeah.
tell me.
I would say that for at least the radio scene from what we did yesterday, that comes across as pretty naturalistic,
Mhm.
especially concerning my character's lines because she's kind of putting on a radio personality,
Mhm.
and so the flow of her dialogue comes across as real to me, and writing naturalistic dialogue is a challenge, no matter whether you're doing it for film or / television, or for stage. Just to include all of the little dips and falls, and also it's a choice to write it that way, because are you just going to write it like, here's what I want you to say? If you stumble across a few words and add a few uhs and ums, that's up to you. And I've seen people do it both ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was the end of that thought.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's come a long way with the initial rough draft, and then running it through the table read. There have been quite a few rewrites on that thing, which is why we started the project a couple of years ago, and we actually shot the very first scene of your radio host scene yesterday. So it's that project is still ongoing, and because it's indie right now, we're going to shoot certain scenes as we can. And I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to try to shoot as many of your scenes as we can before your hair changes. Because
Before my hair changes.
Continuity.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
no, and I was
Because it's
actually kind of
independent,
thinking
and we're
about
not gonna
that
have to
yesterday.
put a wig on that.
I was thinking about that yesterday because it was like, well, depending on when we shoot the next scene, I'll have to like figure out. I'll just go to get my haircut and say like, I need you to trim like, because it technically takes place I think like within a week or maybe even the same day.
The pilot?
the radio scene and then the hallway scene with the teacher.
Yeah, that's about the same day.
Yeah, so I'm gonna have to be like, all right, so here's what my hair looks like that day. Make sure that you cut off enough of that length because my hair grows pretty fast. So
Well, you saw how I operate, right?
yeah,
You saw how I work on sets and
I
everything.
trust
like that.
you. I
Okay.
trust you.
But here's the thing also is that I'm a producer of the show. So now that we've shot the scene, I'm going to push for us to keep shooting scenes. You know, of course, because it's indie, we have to
Yeah.
work with your availability. But as far as that goes, it's my job to make sure, because I am a director and this is Dave's first time directing.
Yeah.
So I'm doing, I'm backing him up on whatever it is. So
Yeah.
if you couldn't tell, there were certain things that I brought up to him on set yesterday. Well, that's because it's a learning experience. Plus, I was teaching a young guy yesterday.
Yeah. We had a really great. I almost called him a stagehand, but he's not a stagehand.
No, he was the title that he was given yesterday was grip,
Grip. Okay.
because he did a lot he was gripping. Grip's grip. We grip stuff, you know. And
Is
I say
that-
we
Is
because
that what grip actually means? Like the title of
We
grip?
grip
It's like,
stuff.
here, hold this.
yeah, we grip stuff. That's
I love
mean-
that. I never actually knew.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I mean-
I'm far less in the world
Oh, God,
of film and television than I
Yeah.
am
it's a whole
in,
different world.
like I'm aware of the term and obviously I used it before because I called, what did I say, third grip or something.
Third grip, yeah.
Uh,
And it takes
or
time
best
to
toy.
learn that stuff. Yeah, I remember my first experience on a set was with this guy Larry, who's worked on films like Forrest Gump, Lethal Weapon, and stuff like that. And so we're working on a local project, and Larry said, "Grab me a stinger." Had no idea what a stinger is, and so here, let me also say this too. I'm part Native American, and Larry is full Native American, and our elders teach stories through fable or through teach lessons through stories.
Mhm.
And so I said, Larry, what's a stinger? Well, 15 minutes later, I found out it was an extension cord. But I had to go through a story to why I should understand what this was. And then I started to learn that there are all kinds of different things like sticks, there's a tripod, there's combo stands, mambo stands, shot bags, ball busters. I mean, there are some words in production on that side when it comes to equipment that okay, since this is not, we're not having to worry about hurting any kids' feelings or anything like that, but my first experience as a grip was the key grip asked me to go grab my butt plug. And I just stood there with this dumbfounded look on my face like, what the hell do they need a butt plug for? And I was thinking, oh my God, what? I just did not know what to say. And so I rushed to the truck because you don't double
stand
time
around and
anytime you do anything.
Yeah.
No, because time is money on set. So I ran to the truck and I asked the best boy, which is usually a person that's on the truck and watches all the equipment and stuff like
Right.
that. I asked him. I said, dude, Bobby asked for a butt plug. And he looked at me and he just laughed his ass off. And he comes back and he goes, "Here you go." And it was, a quarter inch to a 3/4 or to a 3/4 inch to a quarter inch adapter, because it went into a combo stand, so you
Okay.
could put a smaller light on it.
All right.
And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was thinking to myself, well, it does kind of look like something that might be, and that's kind of where the names come from on this stuff.
Well,
And it varies from the East Coast to the West Coast.
that would make sense.
It's crazy.
Depending on like what sector of the industry you're in, whether it's more, like on a news communication style front, or if it's more like on an entertainment and media kind of front. I can see how the terminology would be a little bit different.
Oh, it's crazy. I mean, there are manuals. I have a
Nobody reads the manual.
yeah, I have a grip and electric manual that I don't know where it's at right now, but it's a good 120 pages of equipment, names of equipment, various names of equipment and stuff like that. So I think if anybody's gonna, when you start getting up into the union size gigs
Mm-hmm.
and the bigger productions,
Yeah.
we're talking about $1 million productions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If somebody tells you they need a stinger, You
Better
can't have a second
Go
thought.
get the thing.
Yeah, because time is money. If people are standing around, they're still getting paid on set. So if everybody's waiting, um, everybody's being paid. The actors are being paid. Crew's being paid. Everybody's being paid, but there's no product being produced.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, and for like for when I started out as a grip,
Mm-hmm.
there was no rest for us because we were there to get all the equipment on the set. We staged all the equipment on there,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to give big props to the crew because I started out that way.
Yeah.
Always wanted to be a director. I wanted to be an actor. Now I'm a director and filmmaker, but I figured I didn't go to film school.
Mm-hmm.
I went to the school of on-set learning.
Okay.
And so I started out as a grip, and I thought it would be like set up this one scene and then relax and wait for the next setup of the scene. No, no, no. We set up this one scene, then they shoot that scene. And while they're shooting that scene, we're over here setting up the next shot,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it's going to be. And then at the end of the day, when everybody's done, when they're shooting that very last shot, that martini shot,
Yep.
that's when we have a minute. And we're usually like, oh, this is cool. I'm really enjoying this film. That's all
Yeah.
we're seeing of this thing. And then we load everything up at night, put it away and everything like that.
Yep.
Everybody else goes
And
home
then
and the
you
crew's still on set, packing their stuff up.
And then maybe you get to sleep a little bit, and then you get up and you do it all again.
And that's where the unions come in. And that's why it's very important for
Yes.
unions because there are
Because you got to
strict rules
protect
for
from
hours.
people being overworked.
Yeah.
And making
Yeah, because there's
sure
been
that
crew that
people are
have
working
died.
safely. Yeah.
There was a guy, I can't
So
remember what set he was on.
unions are a good thing.
Yeah, there was a guy who was working on a set. I can't remember what movie it was on or what the guy's name was, but I guess they had gone through like a week's worth of 16 to 18 hour days.
Mm.
And one night the guy was, or a day after it was, he was heading home, he got into a wreck on the LA freeway and died
Oh, jeez.
because he fell asleep at the wheel. And I mean, that stuff happens all the time. And, where they're working, the minimum amount of hours
Yeah.
for a feature film in the industry is 12 on, 12 off, 6 days a week. So you'll work 12 hours, you're off for 12 hours,
Mhm.
and then you're back.
Yeah.
And that can vary depending on whether you need to shoot a day scene or a
Mhm.
night scene or whatever it is. And that's 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And they'll go like that for a month, 2 months, or if you like Kubrick or something like that, a
Mhm.
year to 2 years on a production. You know what I mean? So these crew are working hard, and it takes a lot of people. There's a lot of effort that goes in to filmmaking and
Mhm.
production that you never see.
Yeah.
And they work really hard to make sure that you don't notice any of their work, that you're just focused on whatever the images they're trying to sell or whatever the story is.
It's the same thing in theater. There are the occasional, grumbles from a few techs who be like, no one ever appreciates this, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But I do notice that the people who have been in it the longest do have the attitude of, if we've done our jobs right, no one will ever notice that we've done anything.
Right.
Because our job is to help immerse the audience
Exactly.
into this little world
Mhm.
and, help along that willing suspension of
Mhm.
disbelief.
And you're talking about stage?
Yeah.
So if you got a stage crew that's building a set and they half-ass it, and you're in the middle of a great scene and you're delivering the performance of your fucking life, and the front of the house falls down on stage, that just ruined the whole show.
I got
there.
I don't know if maybe the temperature's changed. I literally just had like a shudder
Yeah.
when you said that.
Yeah, and I mean that's critical.
I've been lucky. I've never had anything fall over
Mhm.
or like a step break or anything
Mhm.
like that.
Well,
but
usually they don't
I
put
can-
those kind of things in the hands of newbies.
Yeah, no. Well, hopefully not.
And on that note too is I have a great appreciation for actors, a huge appreciation for actors, because actors put themselves out there all the time. They do stuff that I auditioned for a play when I was younger, and I can still remember the stupid ass line that I couldn't even read when I had the script in my hand. So I get up on stage, and they say action, and I froze.
Oh.
I froze, and it was the line was they asked me, "What are you wearing?" And I say, "It's a William Tell tie." And they say, William Tell tie? What's that?" "Well, see, you pull the bow and it hits the apple." I can still remember those goddamn lines to this day. But when I was on stage and I had it right in front of me,
It
I
just
froze,
wasn't happening.
and my eyes couldn't read right because I was shaking, and so it was all over the place. So I have an immense appreciation for actors and what they do, because there are times when there's like scenes where actors have to draw in to give reality for like traumatic events,
Mhm.
or there's sometimes there's nudity, and they're exposing themselves emotionally, physically, everything like that, and then actors go out and they're the front piece for all these films.
Mhm.
Now, I had a conversation with a guy one time, and he kind of pissed me off. He said I could take any person, and he said actors are trained monkeys, and I could take any actor and get them to deliver a performance. And I said, man, I said, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, oh, I get any actor to do whatever I want. I could have an actor do this scene or that scene or do whatever. And I said, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard. I said, here's a simple example. Um, an actor goes into a performance, and they have to become that character. I mean, if they're going to deliver a true performance,
Mhm.
they're going to become that character. You see what Natural Born Killers did to Woody Harrelson. For several years, that guy was a little fucked up from doing that show. But he's method, so he really got into the mindset
I was gonna
of
say
this
it
serial
also
killer,
also depends.
or mass murderer, I should say.
Well, I would say that it partially depends on the show and partially on what techniques the actors are utilizing.
Yeah, there are some that can just pull it out of the air.
Well,
It doesn't
and
matter.
I mean there are
Sorry, I
some
have to
people
let
who are.
myself know when hours go by. Old.
I mean there are some people who are very hardcore one school or the other.
Yeah.
If you've ever listened to any of my content before, I frequently reference the outside or the outside inside approach or the inside outside approach. And basically all that means is, and those are not the only schools of acting, and there are different teachers who are associated with both of those. Um, what method acting is generally associated with is Americans and film and television, and that is more immersive and more of a character or an actor becoming the character and really getting in that headspace.
It's a
And
transformation for sure.
and that makes sense for television and film because you're right here for most of it. And
Oh yeah,
and
huge
you're
difference.
not
Yep.
you're not building off of it. It's going to remain static for all time. There's no direct interaction with the audience. And
Yeah,
and
you
so
don't. You're on a comedy set. There's no applause. There's no laughter.
Yeah.
If you're an actor on a comedy set, and then you deliver a line that's just phenomenal, and you hear laughter, somebody fucked up on that set, and they're gonna have to retake that thing. So an actor on something like that, and let me finish the story real quick about that.
Yeah.
So I told him, I said, an actor's interpretation of a character is crucial to something, and so you can't take anybody and throw them into a role and think they're going to deliver an Oscar-winning performance.
Yeah.
The example is that Tom Hanks played Forrest Gump the way his interpretation was. Great actor, Academy Award winner. You could not take Al Pacino and have him play Forrest Gump because that character would have been something completely different, and it would not have worked. So it takes the actor's interpretation and their ability to become whatever they want to be in that.
Yeah.
And people have said, Al Pacino is Al Pacino in every movie. Sure he is, but he always delivers a performance that is believable. But and the difference was to when we're talking about stage and film is I've worked with stage actors on film, and I've always had to have them reel it in quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because when you're on
We're
stage,
too big.
you are projecting. You're projecting out to a large audience.
Yeah.
Or at least a small audience. You have to project your movements, your actions have to be clear to this. When I got you on camera,
you got to play to the back, as we say.
You do. And when I got you on camera, you have to bring it way down because I'm right there in your face.
Yep.
And the things that you're not seeing that the audience is not seeing when you're on stage, I am catching on that camera because I'm catching the subtle eye movement, the curious look, or the something, or the twitch of the mouth.
I was going to say, there's so many different muscles in the face and so many different subtleties of thought and emotion that you
Even
can
breathing.
capture on. Yeah.
Will capture your breathing. Like if you're doing a scene where somebody's lying, and then the actor kind of like increases their breathing rate, you can catch that stuff, especially with these high definition cameras nowadays. I mean, back when we were shooting on film, I love film. I love the look of film and everything like that. But if I shoot something in 8K, and then I could zoom
We're up
in
to
on your
8K
pores.
now.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. If
That's
I shoot,
so many pixels.
oh yeah, but it's a great thing. Real quick, when I shot a small piece for a guy, and he couldn't understand why I had pulled back more than what he was talking about on this particular scene. Well, I know that what I'm going to be able to do if I shoot this in 4K or 8K, whatever it is, and then I frame it larger for the camera, I'm going to be able to reframe that in post. So he couldn't understand that concept. I said, just let me shoot this, because when he gave me his storyboards, I saw, okay, we've got a wide shot, a medium shot, and a close-up shot. I shoot this scene in 4K. We don't have to do it 3 different times and 3 different setups. I could do a wide shot, then I can reframe it in post, and I've got a medium shot and reframe it again, and I got their eyes. I got a tight shot. But, he didn't understand that. So I really dig, the high def.
I was gonna say
digital,
that is
digital cinematography.
That is one thing when they started going to 4K, and some people were saying like, well, what are you ever gonna need that much definition for? I'm like, well,
room to play.
Exactly.
Room to play.
And like I used to edit videos all the time when I was in high school, and like things were no, even 10 years ago, things were nowhere near where they are now. As evidence, I told you, I got my old video editing software to load on this laptop, but it wouldn't recognize any of the videos that I had because the encoding has just jumped so far ahead. Like the program didn't even know what to do with it. It's like, no, it's not there. I don't see it. I'm like, it's right there. Nope, don't see it. Nope.
Well, I have a Mamma Jamma machine. I call it my Mamma Jamma.
The Mamma Jamma.
The Mamma Jamma. In my office, and I've just recently had to upgrade. I was able to edit 4K footage on that machine with no problem, and real-time edit.
I know, weird. Like, okay, I'm gonna click this, and then wait 20 seconds for it to actually do what it's supposed to do.
No, it was real time in LE. And so then I did, and this camera, why I love this camera is because when I got this, this was the only one that was shooting in, I think it's 42.6 megapixel. Okay, so for the travel show, I was shooting a sunset over downtown Denver.
Oh.
Yeah, beautiful night. And so what I did was, because it's time lapse, I set it at 42.6 megapixel. And so it's snapping a picture, 5 seconds later, snapping another one, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So it's just single images, stills.
Yeah.
So I bring it back to the office, and I'm like, oh, this is going to look really cool. And I load it into the system, which takes a little bit longer. I'm like, oh, maybe because it's images. What it was is that the 42.6 megapixel made my image 8K. Yeah, and so my computer was like, ah, and it couldn't do anything. So I've recently had to upgrade that. Yeah, and it's beautiful. I mean, I was able to, if I wanted to.
Yeah, that had to be one hell of a time capture.
Oh man, it's gorgeous. And then what I could do is I could actually, even though it's still images, when I set it up to time lapse, I can actually pan that scene, even though there was no pan going on.
Yep.
If I trim it down to 4K, which is half the size, I'm cutting it down to here, and I can do a pan, whatever it is, even though I didn't do that.
Yep.
I could do a digital zoom on the thing.
And there's no loss of resolution.
There was no loss of resolution.
We don't have to remember that in the real world, there is no enhance.
Yes.
Enhance.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
Yeah, there's no beauty.
There is a limited.
Filter. There's no beauty filter. But it was really cool. And when I discovered it, I full sized one of the pictures, and I could make out. I'd have to say I was at the Denver Natural History Museum, and I was shooting downtown, and if when I pushed all the way in, I could almost make people out in the windows in the freaking buildings. I was like, and this is not
so
the high
much
end no more.
detail.
There's a guy I was shooting a fashion show with who has a camera that shoots in 150 megapixel.
Yeesh.
Yeah, this camera thing, this body of this thing is just crazy insane. But I'm like, yeah, it's a little bit more than I want to even try to attempt to mess with.
Like, we don't need that much.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to get one story in about you acting in front of the camera.
Oh God.
So, give me your favorite.
Okay, I did one because somebody didn't show up on set and we needed an extra,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when I had really long hair, and somebody called me like the gas station Steven Seagal or some shit like that, which is I don't know if that was an insult or what, but I took it as it's appropriate, and so then my favorite time was when I was contacted by a casting agent friend of mine out in L.A. and said, hey, we're going to be shooting a film in Omaha called Lucky. And that was starring
Are you
Con
in
Hanks.
that too?
Yeah.
I was an extra in that film.
I was too. But when I was called by her, she said, hey, we want you to play a sky cap. And I was like, oh, sweet. I was thinking, oh, man, I'm like captain of the ship, some shit like that. And I thought, man, I'm gonna look really cool on this. Maybe I'll be walking through the airport with some stewardesses on each side, having my bags, salute people as I walk by. And I called my aunt and I said, and she worked for the airport, Epley Airfield. And I said, hey, Auntie, what is, I'm doing a role as a sky cap in this film. And she goes, oh, okay. I said, well, it's kind of cool, right? What's a sky cap? She goes, a baggage handler. And I was like, oh, shit, okay. And so, here I am. I got my, 3 seconds on camera.
Yeah.
And I'm toting, what's her, I can't remember her name. I think her Ari, I can't remember her name, but it was,
The main,
Ari Gaynor, I think is her name.
yeah.
They were coming out of the airport, and so I was toting their luggage from the airport to the cab.
So did your scene make the final cut?
It did.
Okay. I'm gonna have to watch the movie again. I don't think my scene actually made it into the final cut, which I'm fine with. I still got paid. So, but the funny thing is that the dresser, who, costumed me, at first put me in something that ended up everyone was like, we really love that. It's too cute. We can't have an extra being cuter and I was too.
You can't out-cute the lead.
I was basically yeah
you can't
because
the
she was I think I want to say it was like a bar or a restaurant or something. And they ended up probably putting me in a suit. Which I think is hysterical because anytime I have ever been in any kind of corporate dress,
mm-hmm.
I always just think there's no way anybody believes that I'm someone who works in that industry. I just don't think that I'm an actor,
Uh-huh.
I will become the role, and I know the mannerisms and the patter
mm-hmm.
of people who are in the corporate life. I just don't think I look like someone. And maybe that's all in my head.
That's in your head because the people who are watching you don't know you, so they don't know.
No,
if you are
and maybe that's all it is. I just think whenever what else was it? When I was in Tape, I don't know if you ever saw the film version of it or the stage version of it. Film version of it had Uma Thurman, way back in the day. But basically, I was playing I want to say an ADA, or maybe I was a prosecutor. I feel like I was an ADA. And I was wearing, something that was at the time very standard, corporate dress. And I look back at the pictures of that, and I'm just like, wow. And maybe it was just because it's off the rack and very ill-fitting. But I was just like, no one believes that I work for a law office. No one will believe this. Oh my goodness. Well, that's funny that you thought it was one role and it's something else entirely.
Oh, something completely different. Yeah.
But it's cool that you made it into the final cut. So kudos to you.
Oh, I saved that scene. I don't know where it is now, but
they probably saw my because I think all I had to do was walk across camera.
Yeah.
So I was.
That's basically what I was doing too.
I was gonna say I think technically speaking it would have been counted as a featured extra, or I would have been.
No, that's background.
Background. There was
A featured extra has a line.
a line. That's right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Of course, you're right. I don't know anything about film. You know.
Well, I get
Infinitely
resumes.
more.
I get resumes with headshots, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I was a featured extra in like uh, uh, X-Men or some
Mhm.
Marvel movie
He's
or
like,
something
nah,
like
your
that."
background.
And I'm like, "So you were a featured extra in this film? What was your role?" "Oh, well, I was walking down the street." I'm like, "No, you were background.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
not a. Don't put that as a featured extra because
It's
that's
good
easy
that
to
you
check
tell
on."
people that, though.
Yeah.
I feel
Or
like
atmosphere.
I feel
Atmosphere
like-
of background.
Oh, atmosphere of
Yes,
extra.
atmosphere. That's
Even
right.
better.
Bar patrons in a bar. Atmosphere.
Do you play any instruments?
I do not. I wish I played the piano. I've been thinking about taking up the piano because I wanna have parties at my house, and I want to be able to sit down with a cocktail and put it on my piano and start playing a couple tunes for.
So
My
so
guess.
you want to be the person in the old timey movies who
Yes.
when people come over to say, oh yes, let us all
That's right.
sing
Let's
show
sit at the
tunes
piano
together.
and sing.
Glissando.
Yep, exactly.
Um, I always wanted to be a person like that. My piano skills are pretty limited to what I learned when I was taking piano lessons.
Mhm.
And because I haven't had access to a piano since I was 19, I haven't the most contemporary song that I ever learned was Ben Folds' Zach and Sarah, and that's it.
On the piano.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
also
can't even do
learned.
chopsticks.
I also learned a couple songs from Labyrinth because I'm obsessed with that movie.
Mm.
Do you play board games at all?
I don't.
See, I'm learning all
I
kinds
don't.
of new things about Jonathan because, like, my normal type of palate cleanser questions aren't going to work for you. So now all I'm doing is, like, learning new things. So this is more for me than it is for you. Do you have a favorite, I'd say director or screenplay writer? Either or.
My favorite director is Scorsese.
Okay.
I've always liked the realism in his films. There are different directors and writers that I like for different reasons. I like Tarantino's films, and I like his dialogue because it's more common dialogue that you listen to instead of crafted dialogue to sound almost poetic or something. It's more raw and gritty. I like Nicholas Winding Refn's films for the visual look of what he wants. He's colorblind, and so a lot of his things, like his most recent films, Only God Forgives and Neon Demon, are very rich with the purples and the blues and stuff like that. Well, because he's colorblind, he wants the exaggerated colors in that.
Yeah.
And so that comes out in that.
Well, that's really cool. I did not know that. That is a literal look into the director's eye.
Yeah.
Coming across in an actual film.
Yep, and it's him turning a negative into a positive, which is really cool.
I love it.
I do play video games though, and I've been playing this game called Quake 2 for probably about 20 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually made number 2 in the world one time. One time. And
Like 5 minutes.
I still throw that out there. But I've been playing that game. It's a first-person shooter, and I play that every once in a while. I just like to, if I've had a really stressful day, I just get in, kill as many people as I possibly can, and then the stress is gone and I'm done.
Now I can go to sleep.
Yes, I killed. I've gotten maybe 200 frags. I think I've killed enough for the day, and I'll drive home calmly.
Have you ever moved on to any other types of video games beyond FPS?
I played real-time strategy games like Age of Empires.
Okay.
And Warcraft. I've tried those a couple different times. I enjoyed Age of Empires. I like the idea of building it from, early stages using wood and then stone and stuff like that. But first-person shooters, I think, I like Call of Duty.
Hun Pritchard has given the recommendation of Unreal Tournament. I am not.
I
familiar
played
with
Unreal
it.
Tournament.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was.
I don't know if I haven't played a recent version. I don't know when the recent version came out, but
Yeah.
I used to play Unreal Tournament all the time. Unreal was really good. I tried the newest version of Quake, which is Tournament of Champions, and I just couldn't get into it for some reason. It just didn't feel as. I mean, Quake 2 for me felt down. It was down and dirty.
Okay.
You know what I mean? There wasn't a whole lot of visual behind it, and it didn't take a whole lot. I mean, God, I could do it on my old computer.
Yeah.
And now that I actually have it on my computer in the office, so I'll get on there later in the day or something like that. Or well, no, not even when the work is done. If I'm just like in the middle of the day, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna take a break. I'll get on and play for a little while. But yeah, God, there was another one. What's it called? I can't. The
Thinking.
yeah.
Thoughts.
Well, the character was, I think it was called Snake or something like that, and the whole idea was to sneak up on people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you couldn't just come in and just start shooting everybody up and stuff like that because
Yeah.
you'd do better if you didn't alarm the other
Yeah.
characters that were on the screen. I
Right,
really
right,
like
right.
that one too.
Give
And
Arkham Asylum a shot sometime.
what's that?
I said you should give Arkham Asylum a shot sometime.
Is that's the Batman one, right? I
Yep.
think I played that for a little while. It was kind of cool.
Yeah.
I got stuck on a character and I was like, hey, I'm not playing this no more.
Yeah, that happens sometimes.
It was a high-level boss.
I'll almost always go back and like redo things. Right there, I think it was one of the Skyrim games. I actually didn't get stuck on a boss, but like something went wrong with the save point or whatever. I accidentally cut a chicken's head off in a village, and then the whole village lost its shit and came after me. I was like, I didn't mean to. I was just, all it said was interact, and so I pressed X. And apparently interact meant behead the chicken. I didn't mean to. And I got so frustrated that I couldn't back up, and I was so far into the game, but I was stuck at that point, and I got so mad at it that I haven't touched it since. I'll get back to it at some point.
I feel you. I know how it is.
To wrap us up, I know we already kind of had the plug for Travel Buds. Is there anything else that you would like to plug before we sign off?
Yeah, I'd love to plug this studio. I mean, if there's anybody
Studio.
locally, come down to Studio B. Clete Baker is the main guy here at Studio B.
And I can throw in a website,
Links. Yeah.
whatever you
Perfect.
want.
Perfect. And I mean, he's reasonable with prices. I'm trying to talk Kat here into doing her vlogs from one of our studio offices over here.
It might happen because if I can't get it figured out at home, I may just have to do it from here for a while.
That would be so horrible.
I'm sure you would just be devastated.
Terribly. But yeah, Studio B. You know, it's the engineer has gold and platinum albums. They're out there on the wall. I don't know if you've seen them or not, but he knows what he's doing. He's been in the game for a long time, and he's very reasonable on his rates for the studio.
Very good.
And TravelBuds.tv.
Well, for your production needs or your cannabis culture enjoyment, we have Jonathan Lanz. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this for me. This was really last minute. I just asked him yesterday, and he was good enough to comply with my ridiculous demands. Thanks again for letting me come into the studio. I'm sorry we couldn't get the fancy technology working, but next time. We're like crawling like half of a zombie corpse closer to being able to use a proper camera, proper microphones, instead of just using my phone.
Well, now that I know what she needs, we'll be set up the next time.
Well, and maybe I can figure out some kind of editing sort of deal with Jonathan to be the conversation to be continued later. Because right now I have, like I said, just no editing capability for anything beyond like 2 minutes. You guys remember those tiny little videos I made for when I took over Molly's channel to give you updates on how she was doing. That's about all I could do. But anything beyond that, just not happening. Thank you again, Jonathan.
Thank you.
And
it was a pleasure.
everybody who was able to join us live, thank you for joining into the conversation. I hope you had fun watching. And I'll do another interview next month, and hopefully it will look and sound even better. And I hope you have an enjoyable rest of your evening and a good week ahead. And now I'm gonna sing an impromptu song as I go back over to the phone. And I'm gonna hit the button to stop the live broadcast. Say bye, John.
Bye, John.